Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Saturday, July 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you would kindly hit the like button, guys, that would be terrific. All right, well, in this video, we're going to talk about elongated skulls. And I've talked about it before on my channel. I've done some videos on it, especially about the elongated skulls, and also the artificially deformed skulls that were found in the U.S. in Arizona by way of amateur archaeologist Wetherill, and then Harold S. Gladwin, the curator of the Arizona Museum, Archaeological Museum, who was more or less dismissed by his colleagues and sort of beat up and thrown under the bus by his colleagues because he had some radical ideas about there being some other sorts of people here in the Americas, especially in the Southwest there in Arizona, that were different from the native peoples. And, he put that idea forth and he was just summarily dismissed and beaten up. And he really resented it. And, he more or less said, these people have eyes, but they don't see. And he never got over that, because he was serious about his archaeology. And by the way, guys, like 90% of the major archaeological discoveries in the world were all made by amateur archaeologists, all of them. Okay, almost all of the major archaeological discoveries in the world were made by explorers, amateurs, people who had nothing to do with archaeology or anthropology, which are new sciences, relatively new sciences. They're only a few hundred years old, a couple hundred years old, that's it. It's not like they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. So, they're just starting to get through this. Let me know how it is in another 800 years or so, or something, how it's developed. Okay, I won't be around, but that's how much time you need to put in on this, guys. It doesn't happen overnight. I don't care what advanced technology we have. It seems advanced to us, but maybe to another civilization somewhere back in time or in space somewhere, something seemed like nothing but caveman with a bunch of stupid toys. you know. So we don't know, but I went over the elongated skulls in the U.S. from C.W. Ceram's book, The First American. Okay, I read that book, and I did a lot of videos on the chapters in his book, and one of them was about these elongated skulls and how they were naturally, they found naturally formed ones, and then they found the artificial deformation type ones as well. So they found both kinds. And that was a bit curious to me. I made a video about it, but I just saw Chuck CFF's 7865 Chuck's video on this article that just, I guess, the press release came out, and Science News put out their own article about it. And Chuck read the article, just put out this video the other day, CFF's. And, it's a fascinating article. Science News gets into it and tells about it or whatever. And, he beat me to it, though, because I had also seen it put out on Ancient Origins, and I get notifications from that channel as well. But they also came out with an article about the artificially deformed skulls in China that they found. And it's just interesting. They didn't say it in Science News article, but in this article they did. And I just want to read it to you. Look at these stupid illustrations they give here of them supposedly doing this artificial cranial deformation, and these poor children were like tortured for no reason whatsoever. But look at the dopey illustrations they got here. It's terrible. I mean, the people look like deformed. just because the skulls are, I guess. But it's interesting what they said at the end of this article. Then I'm going to read another one to you, which is really what the video is about. Was the oldest skull deformed? However, there are some. Now, I don't know who these some are, but I can only suppose that it's maybe other archaeologists because, I mean, you don't use those words like the word they. I mean, wise guys always say, who's they? Who's they? You don't know. You must be stupid because they mean the people in charge, the people in power, the people who pull the strings, the people who push the buttons, the people who control and make the rules. That's who they are. What are you, stupid? Come on. Who's they? Shut up, wise guy. Sit down. Shut up. Was the oldest skull deformed? However, there are some, and they reported that they found many skulls, more skulls than this one skull from like 12,000 years ago, which maybe these people from 6,000 years ago, even if those dates are right, they don't know. But in any case, when I was older, they're questioning that. However, there are some who believe that the identification of the skull that is believed to be up to 12,000 years as being deliberately misshapen may be incorrect. While the skull is slightly elongated, it is not pronounced. So, in other words, natural, and it seems very close to the description of the skulls that were given by Harold S. Gladwin at Mesa Verde there. Very curious. This may indicate that it was not intentionally deformed, and there is only evidence for the skulls dating from 6,000 years ago being modified. Regardless of this debate, the implication of the find at Utero are very important. They show that intentional skull modifications were practiced in this area in the Neolithic. Moreover, the research can help us understand something of the society and even beliefs of the people who lived in the area in a later part of the Stone Age. Yes, they might have emulated the people that came before them that were some other kind of humanoid, maybe more advanced, especially in genetic engineering. They might just genetically engineer themselves some workers and companions. Hey, it's a lot. Probably, they probably did like a cost benefit thing. Okay, well, we can make robots, but, to make the robots, just going to pollute everything, and then the robots get all crazy and whatnot. They didn't want that, so instead they genetically engineered themselves, some humanoids themselves, like all the different people that you see around the world. They're just different brands. That's all. And then the gravity changed and these people couldn't exist anymore. Bodies weren't designed for it. Okay, so, you know what? This ran me into this article here on Ancient Origins from 2015. And it's a very interesting article. That's what the title of the video is about. These in utero elongated skulls. Because, if it is truly in utero, okay, which when I had first seen this or heard this with Brian Forster some many years back, when they even mentioned a fetus with an elongated skull, I was like, the minute that was mentioned, Brian Forster didn't have to say anything. Okay, if you're on the ball, you get it. That's not possible if this is all artificial. So, in any case, let's read from this article here. It's 2015, Igor Gontcharov. And I've seen his writing here on Ancient Origins before, but let's read this a little bit because it is very interesting. All right. Okay. Elongated skulls are usually explained in terms of head binding or artificial cranial deformation. This paradigm emerged in the first half of the 19th century as a way of explaining unusual skulls discovered in Europe and South America, in places such as Crimea and Peru, respectively. And that's a very interesting link right there. But again, I bring you back to my video about the elongated skulls at Mesa Verde. Well, they're there too, and all, besides being in Peru. So, well. The main idea behind the head binding paradigm is that all elongated skulls are a result of intentional modification of the form of the skull by applying external pressure. In other words, all elongated skulls are merely deformed, quote unquote, normal skulls, similar to those of modern humans. Okay, that's what mainstream says. Okay, and here's a picture from 1860 of elongated skull from Korea and other parts of the world. Okay, so maybe slightly variations here or there, but just more of an affirmation that there was these different sorts of humanoids in the past, and that's the ones we know about, because we can't possibly know everything or have dug up every square inch of the planet. And as we keep on hearing in article after article after article after article, doesn't matter what part of the world it is, there's tons of unexcavated archaeological sites all around the world. So how, this is my question about the whole thing here. It's mind-boggling. They're going to tell us this is how it was, and mainstream's going to force it up our rear end. This is how it was, and this is our picture of the past and everything. Yet the whole planet is covered with unexcavated archaeological sites. How could you possibly say that with any sort of conviction? It's ridiculous. It's just these emotionally immature people who grow up to be scientists and stuff, get into these positions, and then, you have emotionally disturbed people in these positions of authority that just can't get over themselves. It's horrible. But anyways, let's go on here. What evidence could challenge this paradigm? Question mark, right? The existence of fetuses with elongated skulls. That is evidence that such skulls already had an elongated shape in utero. Okay, you see that right there, right? Before any head binding was possible. Do we have such evidence? Yes, we do. Moreover, this evidence has been known to the academic community for over 163 years. Isn't that interesting? Okay, where was it buried? Can you get to it easy? Or just, the praises of the people they like are always sung, but, the people they're not too crazy about, they don't do much talking about, even though their science is just every bit as good as theirs. Rivero and Schutte in Peruvian Antiquities, 1851 Spanish and 1853 English, argue that the protagonists of the artificial cranial deformation hypothesis are mistaken, since they had only considered the skulls of adults. In other words, the hypothesis fails to take into account the skulls of infants, and most importantly, fetuses, which had similar elongated skull shape. No, they were artificially formed. How had they go in there? Yeah, they did surgery. Then they did it. They put a little mini one on there. Is it worth quoting Rivero and Schutte? Quote, we ourselves have observed the same fact of the absence of signs of artificial pressure in many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance of pressure of the cranium. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. And of this truth we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave of Huiche, 2 leagues away from Tarma, and which is at this moment in our collection. Okay, and this is an illustration of it. I know, I said a lot of people, aliens, aliens. Nope, just another kind of humanoid that was on this planet. I don't know if aliens have been here or not, but this is just other homegrown stuff. Homegrown. Professor Dautrepont, of great celebrity in the Department of Obstetrics, has assured us that the fetus is one of 7 months age. It belongs, according to a very clearly defined formation of the cranium, to the tribe of the Huancas. We present the reader with a drawing of this conclusive and interesting proof in opposition to the advocates of mechanical action as the sole and exclusive cause of the phrenological cranial no negative connotation at the time form, okay, of the Peruvian race. All right. So it says the Huancas, which, makes me think of Huancavelica right away with that extremely fine precision stonework. The same proof is to be found in another mummy, which exists in the Museum of Lima under the direction of Don M.E. de Rivero. Okay, and that's the reconstruction of the fetus there, which, clearly not normal human, average human. Elongated skulls of infants were available to European researchers as early as 1838. The skulls of quote unquote ancient Peruvians were also in Samuel Morton's collection in Philadelphia. Two elongated infant skulls, which Rivero and Schutte mention in Peruvian Antiquities, were discovered and brought to England by Captain Blankley and presented to the Museum of Devon and Cornwall Natural History Society in 1838. Dr. Bellamy provided a detailed description of these skulls in 1842, suggesting that they belonged to two infants, male and female, few months and about a year old, respectively. He indicated substantial structural differences from those of quote unquote normal infant skulls and the absence of the signs of artificial pressure, as well as their similarity to other Titicacan, quote unquote, skulls in the Museum of the College of Surgeons in London. Very weird. Okay, so these are lithographs of the skulls and then artist reconstructions in 1842. But, they'll say, well, I didn't know much or whatever. You're willing to take Louis Agassiz's theory of the Ice Age from earlier 1830s or whatever it is, but nothing else, just say they're all stupid except for the stuff I like. Then they're not stupid. The evidence of elongated skulls present in fetuses and children had led to Rivero and Schutte, Bellamy, Graves, and others to a hypothesis that these skulls belong to an extinct race of people who left their legacy on the populations who succeeded them as a practice of artificial cranial deformation. And not only that, they probably spread around a few genes too, because these kinds of things are present currently, and they sort of call them as, these features as deformations, natural deformations, that people have this kind of condition called dolichocephaly, okay, where the skull is longer, you know, if it's longer, they call it some sort of weird condition that people have related to illnesses, and they no mention of it being part of the record of the past and how they did it artificially in this article about it in Wikipedia. But they show some old skulls there to give examples of it, but they don't say anything about that. But they say it occurs just a normal variation, that's all. But if it's a normal variation, maybe for a reason. Okay. Left their legacy. Besides the practices of artificial cranial deformation, they left a few other things like genes, maybe. I discussed the hypothesis in more detail in the looming collapse of the artificial cranial deformation paradigm, part 1, unborn with elongated head, and part 2, naturally elongated. But I can't get to any of those articles when I click on it. Can't get to anything on this if I click on it, just not let me in. Gotta try to find them somewhere else. Okay. The question now is how it happened that the cranial deformation paradigm became so prevalent. The answer to a large extent consists in the authority of Morton's expert opinion and his extensive collection of skulls, which is now located in the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. His influence was significant enough at the time to close the debate on elongated skulls for the next century and a half, until independent researchers, and I would like to mention Robert Connolly, who popularized elongated skulls in the mid 1990s, and Brian Foster in particular, started to raise questions about the validity of the cranial deformation hypothesis by locating and showing elongated skulls to the public interested in finding out the true story of human origins. Okay, and these are lithographs from 1839 from this collection of Samuel Morton there. Okay, just strange skull types, different than Homo sapiens. And the ones that Brian Foster finds lack the third suture. Only has two, I believe, and that's it, or a single suture or something like that, but not like a normal human with the three sutures. In Crania Americana, Morton offered a description of peculiar elongated skulls which differed from the elongated skulls produced by various artificial means. He suggested that the territory of Peru and Bolivia was previously inhabited by the race of ancient Peruvians. Quote, I have been so fortunate as to have the examination in my own and other collections of nearly 100 Peruvian crania, and the result is that Peru appears to have been at different times peopled by two nations of differently formed crania, one of which is perhaps extinct, or at least exists only as blended by adventitious circumstances in various remote and scattered tribes of the present Indian race. Of these two families, that which is antecedent to the appearance of the Incas is designated as the ancient Peruvian, of which the remains have hitherto been found only in Peru, and especially in that division of it now called Bolivia. Okay? So, even though he says this, guy says that they're not natural or whatever, but he's saying that there was these extinct peoples, a different race of peoples anyway. So even if he says they're not natural, the mainstream doesn't even like this explanation at all. They don't like any. They don't want to explain it other than artificial, and that's it. And what peoples exactly were around in the past. They're not making that clear either, especially in North America where I did my research, okay, about the people of Galena, Lovelock Cave, Salmon Ruins, and even Hoban Weep, all the same people with long skulls, all of them. Although ancient Peruvians had naturally elongated skulls, Morton concluded that they further tried to articulate this feature by head binding. So he says they're naturally elongated skulls. This guy Morton. This is an interesting observation in itself, since it raises a question why a race with naturally elongated skulls would aspire to further elongate them. Perhaps they were also preceded by a race whose skulls were even more elongated. Question mark. Okay, that would be interesting. More of the Morton collection here. Okay. Subsequently, Morton changed his opinion and started to consider all elongated skulls as an exclusive result of head binding. Okay, so he changed his mind. I'm sure, like Harold S. Gladwin changed his mind with some bad mouthing and shaming and all this kind of other stuff. He's going to lose all his friends if he didn't sort of, but he never got over it, Gladwin. Okay. However, in the light of Rivero and Schuette's fetuses with elongated skulls, as well as hundreds of infant and children elongated skulls, which are now available to researchers, it is necessary to open the debate about quote-unquote ancient Peruvians and their counterparts, okay, in other parts of the world. Accordingly, it is necessary to revisit Morton's original encounter with the elongated skulls. This is how he originally described cranial features of ancient Peruvians. The head is small, greatly elongated, narrow its whole length, with a very retreating forehead, and possessing more symmetry than is usual in skulls of the American race. The face projects, the upper jaw is thrust forward, and the teeth are inclined outward. The orbits of the eyes are large and rounded, and the nasal bone salient. The zygomatic arch is expanded, and there is a remarkable simplicity in the sutures that connect the bones of the cranium, unquote. Okay, that's what he said, Morton. Is another one from the Morton collection, trial. Given that there are at least 2 mummies containing fetuses with elongated skulls, in addition to hundreds of infant and children with elongated crania, see Children of the Elongated Skulls as a challenge to the artificial cranial deformation theory and root race research. You can't get to it. It doesn't give me anything. The link's dead. The priority task for the academic community would be to identify the physical location of the mummies and proceed to DNA analysis, which is currently done by independent researchers and enthusiasts who lack infrastructural and financial resources and face significant obstacles in obtaining necessary permissions. It is worth noting that we deal with a very old DNA, the analysis of which is complex and expensive procedure. Okay, so it would be great if they did the DNA, but what's the holdup? You never understand any of these things. Even with, on my channel, I go over to Windover Bog people in Florida there, in Windover, Florida, where they found these people who had mostly European DNA, and they just kept on doing the DNA over and over and over and over, and they kept on getting it, and they just didn't like it. So even today, 30-something years later, after the 80s, when they found the Windover Bog people, they're still looking to get somebody in to do the DNA research. Is going to say, okay, no European DNA, we're good to go. Okay, you just pay somebody enough money and, promise them that they're going to be drummed out of the business forever. Yeah, well, they'll just say, yeah, of course, there's no European